let's go now to our friend Beimnet Abebe from Galaxy Trading. As always, Beimnet, welcome to Galaxy Brains.
Thanks for having me.
I love having you on the show. You took a little bit of a week off last week. It was Thanksgiving, and
Yeah.
I think we kind of hit him with a bit of a sledgehammer the week before. We did a whole episode with you, sort of diving into your bear thesis. Obviously, you've been proven right for, I don't know, since mid-October. I mean, to be clear, I think you were calling for it to be lower before the, or right after the 10-10 crash, and possibly even before.
Yeah.
We've had a little bit of a bounce. I was
Yeah.
asked by a reporter yesterday if a 20% bounce off the recent low meant that we weren't going into a bear market. I guess conveniently for the story, inconveniently for bulls, pulled many examples of huge rallies while
Bear market
Bitcoin
rallies,
was dropping from the 50-week to the 200-week throughout 60% rally, 40% rally, but then still eventually reverted. What's your sense, before we get to the broader market, what's your sense of the Bitcoin price now? Does it alter your near or medium
No,
term
I mean,
thesis?
medium-term thesis is you're still in a downtrend, and there have been no signs to confirm that you are no longer in that downtrend. And so until you have confirmation that you're out of the downtrend, trend is your friend. It's kind of my philosophy. And I think it's perfectly normal and healthy to see, corrections off of like support levels. And it also kind of did seem a little overdone.
Yeah.
The sell-off we had,
Down to
early
80.
this week.
Even high.
We
earlier
went
this
to
week.
we went to 84 2 days ago,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so on the back of like a illiquid weekend move that precipitated into the US session. And so these types of things don't tend to happen in bull markets, at least as frequently.
Yeah, random
Right?
like 92 to 84.
Correct, right? And
8K
so
move.
I think it's symptomatic of the fact that we are in a bear market. And it's just another kind of piece of evidence that supports that view. Like, I still think the bloodbath that you saw on Oct 10th, it's going to take more than, a month and a half to kind of get through that. You had 1.6 million traders liquidated, right? And so, they might be buying the dip, but they're buying the dip with less funds, right? And, I just kind of feels like you don't have that much in the way of catalysts, and markets need catalysts, and they need structural flow as well. And markets move at the margin. And so if these DATs are essentially done buying a lot of stuff, right, you don't have that marginal buy pressure coming from these DATs as aggressively. And then, you also have the fact that, the wealth effect from all these alts coming down tremendously. And then on top of that, you got tax loss harvest selling potentially in crypto-oriented securities.
Yeah, you made this point really well, I think, 2 weeks ago. You were saying that if you look at your portfolio, let's say you had some Bitcoin or some ETFs or altcoins or anything in a broader diversified portfolio, and you're looking at what you can sell to harvest some tax losses, is basically just Bitcoin. Stocks have been up. If you own gold, it was up. Right? I mean, it's one of the only things that really is down year to date. I mean, obviously single name equities here and there for sure.
Yeah.
But for an asset class, crypto is pretty much the only one year to date that is down.
Absolutely.
So if you want to harvest losses, there they are.
There they are.
Yeah.
And so it just leads to a very weird recipe where that lines up really well with the 4-year cyclicality of BTC. And in my head, it's the 50-week moving average that I'm closely following. And we're still below that.
Yeah.
And, historically, when we've broken that level, we have retested it before. And so, my view is until you see a weekly close above that level, bear market is still on.
Yeah, that's your sort of your simplest
My
barometer.
Rubicon. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I think you should trade accordingly, right? As long as you're in trend, what are you meant to do? Right? In trend, if it were an uptrend, you'd buy dips and sell. You'd buy dips and sell rallies. In this instance, you sell rallies. It's the same concept, really.
Yeah, it is. But it's in the other direction,
in
right?
the other
with
direction,
a short bias,
with a
basically.
short bias. And the way I'd like to think about it is it's a sell to buy market, not a buy to sell market. Right? In an uptrend, knowing that it's going to be higher, you can buy the dips a lot more comfortably. Right? In this instance, you can sell the rallies a lot more comfortably, right? And what I'd like to highlight, though, is that the main thing that people should be thinking about is like there's no like fundamental change in Bitcoin, right? Like there's been no fundamental change really ever
Not really.
in
Not in a
its
long time.
history, right? And then in terms of like the reasons people buy Bitcoin, self-sovereignty, preservation of wealth, purchasing power, etc. Like those reasons have not changed. In fact, they probably argue for greater price appreciation in Bitcoin. And so like I feel like people just need to differentiate like the fundamental case from like what is happening structurally in the marketplace. And so I think you're just at a point of like price discovery, like right here, right now, rather than like where is this asset going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, right? And so, like, while we might be, bearish from a tactical and medium term perspective, like the long run, like if you're thinking in multiple year increments or 6 month blocks, like you're still in a reasonable place, and for all the Bitcoiners out there, like this is a great time to stack Sats, still probably, right? But if you're trying to like extract the most value out of the marketplace, like it's probably and like or considering like what path is it going to take, my belief is that it's down before higher, right?
That would almost argue for especially given the other conditions in the market. At least if we assume knock on wood that the AI demand continues, and I've explained many times why I think it will. Then you're looking at a S&P near all-time highs. I mean, we keep saying that. It keeps being true. Rallied really hard in November. At the end of November, equities did to basically get just right to all-time highs. Metals look pretty good. Like, inflation looked right. What do we call it? Miss to the downside. Right. So like doesn't look too bad. And employment looks like Fed easing is going to come. I want to ask you about that. That would tend to be a great setup for Bitcoin and risk assets. So I was going to ask though, does that make your medium term view, the bearish trend, is it possible that it's shorter? Right. I mean,
It's totally
it doesn't
possible.
feel like we're headed into a multi-year crypto winter.
Not a multi-year crypto winter.
Yeah.
Definitely not. But what I think folks need to realize is that a lot of that optimism is baked in to the marketplace. Like retail's been buying for like a gazillion percentage of the last like 30 weeks.
Yeah.
Right. The rate curve is already implying like a pretty aggressive rate cut path, and we've already cut.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a floor to how much we can cut given like the underlying inflation trends in the economy. And so, and then in terms of like AI optimism, which is really what's driven broader equity markets higher, like there's a lot that's baked in.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing is signs for concern like every day in terms of how much optimism is really baked in, right? Take the headlines today that came out that Microsoft might be lowering its like AI related software targets. Maybe it's true. Maybe
It was something like what, that they wanted that people like the older software better or something like that.
The demand for the newer software is less than expected.
The older software was fine.
Yeah.
It's working great or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
But there's just other signs, right? Like the the competition is heating up in like a number of different fronts, right? Like ChatGPT, OpenAI went into code red because over the last 2 weeks they saw their daily active users decline by like 7%.
What does code red mean? I saw this.
Code red means that other models are winning market share.
Yeah, I see. But it's an internal term, or is that a generic term we should all be learning? I was wondering.
I
saw them declare this.
Yes, but
it was
but all it means is that like OpenAI, which is has privately raised money at insane valuations, and people already have doubts, in terms of like their ability to fulfill their commitments, right? There's a really high growth rate implied with that, right? Like it is AI is a growth phase, right? So when you start to see that, derivative of growth,
So
slowed
deceleration.
correct,
Yeah.
of the growth trajectory, right? Like that's gonna impact how people the valuation people put on things essentially. Right. And then if you think about like a company like NVIDIA who has like insanely high margins, and all of a sudden Google's now a competitor, Amazon's now a competitor, and there are other chip manufacturers that are coming in to kind of fill that place. Like what was the Jeff Bezos theories? Like anytime he sees a profit margin, like that's his to like compete for. Right. And so like you're seeing like intensifying competition. and that should probably lead to margin compression, right? In every other market, that's what that leads to, right? And so the question is, like, are enough cracks emerging where people, like, kind of reconsider the thesis? Like, potentially. Like, December's still a pretty strong month for equities, like, historically, from a seasonality perspective. You still have corporate buybacks that are, like, above, like, historical averages. And, apparently retail still does have a little bit of dry powder.
Yeah.
And you do have, like, the fiscal impulse from the big, beautiful bill coming. But the question is, like, how much of that's baked in?
Yeah.
And, like, is it really worth, like, piling into equities here or broader risk, like, when, like, the upside is, like, not quite as much as it was
this
6
is,
months ago or a year
Ray
ago.
Dalio had suggested that like about a month ago that we were in, fall 1999 when the blow off top for the .com bubble was in March 2020. So, I don't know if that transposed. Even if he's right, I don't know if it would transpose exactly, but that's the question. But I think the way he put it was, even if that is the case, you're meant to have light feet because most of the gains were made between January and March. The blow off top was the top you wanted to sell.
Correct.
If you missed that, you missed a lot of the gains. But I want to ask you this too. Obviously after like complete carnage in 22, then Jan 23, when everybody restarts their portfolio, their books and their year-to-date all resets, like, was a phenomenal time to buy Bitcoin at like 15.5 or 16.5. Do you think we'll get a similar effect to start this year? I mean, it's down a lot. It's not out. It's to your point, it's not fundamentally. It's in the market structure is not destroyed like it was in 22. Might you find portfolio managers or investors who say it's a new year, let's get in at this lower cost basis and see what 26 has to bring?
I mean, if you're like, there's the whole dogs of the Dow theory, right? Where every year you're meant to buy like the worst performing like Dow names, and those tend to like do well over time. And so there is that element where if you look at macro asset classes, like precious metals have done well, commodities have recently started to do well, equities have done well, at least front end fixed income has done well. And so if you're thinking about like blocks of assets and like where there's value, like, yeah, I could definitely see like a macro type being like, oh, like this seems like the one.
Yeah, like Bitcoin's down but not out, and
down,
it is down. Other stuff's not down.
Down but not out. But it's just like, at this point, like what is truly the catalyst though, right? It's not market access. Everybody's got the ability to buy Bitcoin.
You got Vanguard finally turn it on for their brokerage clients.
As if
Merrill
the big Vanguard clients that matter, like didn't figure out a way to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, and people are saying like 11 trillion asset manager Vanguard turns it on. It's like, folks, they're talking about their brokerage platform, not their mutual fund and their fund complex. But yeah, I think that's a fair. Why buy it? Momentum is maybe the reason to buy it.
And it's
in that
always
situation.
been a momentum asset, and like you just have to think about like there is this idea of reflexivity in like both directions in markets, and so like like right now, like the reflexivity is to the downside.
It's like part of human condition, right?
Yes. Yeah.
They turn sour.
Yes.
Not devastatingly so, but noticeably so.
Yeah.
And you're like, and maybe that's to your point about if you have a long-term view, that's the contrarian indicator. I think the question is the obvious question is how deep does this, if it is a bear market, as you say, how deep does it go? And how soon do we see that depth?
Yeah,
right?
I mean, my view is pretty consistent. Like, where I'm really going to buy the dip is at like structural support, which
200
is
week moving
200
average.
week moving average. If you want to take a stab like at the 100, like, maybe it's worth averaging in at that level. But like really, like when you're in a downtrend, like it's tough to trade counter trend. Right. And like 85% of money, like, or some crazy percentage of returns are made in trend.
Yeah.
Right. And so to think that you can make money counter trend is statistically like unlikely.
Yeah.
And what I do know for sure is that you are in a bear market and in a downtrend. We were at 125 like 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Right. We have fallen dramatically.
So the 50 that would be to flip it back to support would alter your view.
Correct.
That's like at 100 or higher.
Around 100K.
And then the
sustained closes
200
above. Yeah.
Today is at around 55K.
Yeah.
I think
But it'll trend higher.
Yeah,
over
your
time.
point was that like it's a rising line, so it's not
Correct.
like it nukes to. I mean, if it did, that'd be probably a great buying opportunity. But
Yeah.
you're thinking more of the trend down, and maybe the price meets the 200 week in a bear scenario, like this summer or next summer, I should say.
Yeah.
Right over a few months from now, as it rises. So it ends up. I'm making this up with no math to support it, but in the 60 to 70K range, probably in a few months would be where it would hit that 200 week moving average, theoretically.
Yeah. It could be 6 months, it could be
So
9
that's
months.
kind of your range of indecision, of bearishness, 55 to 100 right now.
Yeah.
Maybe 70 to 9. I mean, it compresses, right?
Yeah,
So 50 will come down.
So
it'll be 70, 65, 60, 70 to 95, 94.
Yeah.
Starts to be the range. So, by the way, it's a pretty tight range
Yeah,
for
it
Bitcoin
is.
historically.
It is.
That's a nice to think too that even in your bear scenario, 55 is the floor. I mean, look how far we've come.
Correct.
My gosh. I mean, that's the other thing that I noticed during Thanksgiving. I don't know. I would like to add before we wrap. What was the reaction? Was there any from your friends and family over Thanksgiving? I know you were with them. How's the Bitcoin doing, or any questions about this? It's a very historic.
No, I
time.
mean, a lot of people asking, like, is now a good time to buy? Right?
See, that's what we talked about last week, Phineas. That was my anticipation of what I would face. Not, oh my God, because there have been years where they're like, oh, you are a terrible investor, or maybe you're even a criminal. Other times we're like, oh my God, he's a genius. And I was like, it was much more measured.
Yeah. No, I think people have just seen the market cycles of crypto, and like the volatility doesn't like phase them as much. But that's like, if you didn't have people asking that, then I would be giga bearish. Right?
They don't even care.
That's like a precondition
that
to
meme.
a marketplace like even existing, that
Apathy.
there's willing buyers.
Yeah.
Right?
It would be like that Don Draper meme, right? I don't think about you at all. That would be very bearish.
That would be very
people were
bearish.
thinking about it.
People were thinking about it.
They're wondering.
Now, the question is there really enough like to take people? I mean, just think about like all the competition you have for attention right now, right? You got meme stocks, rare earth metals, AI names. You now have the advent of prediction markets.
Yeah.
And you've got sports gambling that is all over the industry.
And Bitcoin
now.
isn't even quite volatile enough to capture that old volatile day trader
That's correct.
mind share that it used to.
Right? Because like it's like, okay, I put a bet on it plus 200.
It's kind of like stuck in the rock and the hard place between the long-term value investors who believe in it, and there are many, and it's a growing cohort, and some of them use the ETFs, and the old school Bitcoin traders who were enticed by the volatility, right? They have the long-term ones, maybe I'm sure many may own it. Certainly we do, and I do, and many people own it in the ETFs. But they're also competing with, Mag 7 and other good long-term investment ideas. And then the volatility traders, there's more volatile things to trade that are more interesting. It's even not just in crypto, to your point, outside of crypto as well.
So
like the Robinhood traders aren't going on and buying Bitcoin typically.
Yeah, it's not that
like the GameStop
sexy.
crowd was buying it in 2020. They were gambling on Bitcoin
lower base
stuff.
levels.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like in this interesting, it's like in the middle of the phase shift between low cap volatile and high cap long term.
Yeah. And my question to you, to flip it on you a little bit, I don't know if I've ever asked you a question on the show, but what do you see whales doing when you kind of look at, some of those on-chain metrics that you guys track?
Yeah.
Like what's
there's been a lot of
behavior
whale distribution, and I know some people don't like those metrics. They think that they're all altered by the ETFs and stuff, but in mass, I think you can. I think a good way to think of it is, think about not just whale, long-term investor. And statistically, most of the Bitcoin analysts use this 155-day line because you become statistically much less probable to sell after 155 days over the history of Bitcoin. Coin's much less likely to move over that period. And some people say, well, that's not nearly 100. That's not even half a year. It's not long enough. Well, let's just think about the average 6-month investor. They bought Bitcoin 6 months ago. Maybe they bought the dip in April, right? Went down to 74.5. Well, since then, if you just hodled and opened it up, you're only up slightly. I mean, the block clock is, I guess, offline at the moment, but you're only up slightly. Meanwhile, if you bought the equity dip, if you bought these other dips, like there's an opportunity cost to capital, of course. And so, I think whales they were distributing throughout the year. We've seen that come down a little bit now, I think, because People that own a lot of Bitcoin tend to be smart and they want to sell into an uptrend, not into a downtrend that's selling
Yeah.
into weakness. But I think there's real questions about, like, on a shorter term horizon, will or not, where are you meant to allocate your capital? And if you bought Bitcoin 6 months ago, you're just up slightly. If you bought it a year ago, you're down. And you're looking like, what do I have to show for this 1 year of capital allocation, right? I mean, a loss when S&P is basically at all-time highs? Seems like, why are you trying so hard? I think that's a reasonable question for people to ask. It'll flip, I think, at some point, and those are the
Yeah.
levels you're thinking about as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, Beimnet Abebe, my friend from Galaxy Trading, as always, thank you so much.